Hello, Bubs. We're back with the 17-mile horror. I had intended to read a bunch of chapters, but a child texted me and I had to respond because it's my child. What do you want me to do? What do you want from me? What do you want from me? It was 9:30, chapter 10. It was 9:30 in the morning. This is not very good. Let me put this down here for a second. Scaramucci, Patagucci. Now. Have you seen Polythene Palm? All right, chapter 10. Put it underneath this. It was 9:30 in the morning when Sam pulled into the driveway of a large white colonial home on Ann Arbor Trail. The bronze plaque on a sign to the right of the driveway attested to the fact that this was an historical house. The home was built in the early 1840s and had since been restored by Dr. Harold Schwartz. The home was early Michigan farmhouse in architectural design and had been altered by the doctor to give the appearance of a colonial home. Sam had called the doctor earlier and was able to find him with some free time. Before Sam called the doctor, he had made a call to Lansing in order to get a make on the black LTD seen in the park. He was in luck. He found that there was only one vehicle that was registered to a local resident. That resident was Pete Worthington. With the possession of that knowledge, Sam was more anxious than ever to try and find some reason for his friend's behavior. Why gets, the doctor greeted Sam at the front door. Come in, my friend. We sit in the study, yeah? The doctor, who was in his 70s had been in this country for over 40 years, still had a heavy German accent. Setzen Sie! He motioned to a large black leather chair, which sat in front of a cluttered mahogany desk. Now, my good friend, the doctor took a seat behind the desk. What brings you over to my home on a Saturday morning already? You used to go fishing on Saturday. This must be important. Dr. Schwartz, Sam pulled his pipe from his hip pocket. From his other pocket, he removed the tobacco pouch. This is important. I'm working on a case that has got me really puzzled. Sam filled his pipe and soon had the sweet-smelling smoke filling the doctor's office. The doctor looked at Sam, then reached for a yellow meerschaum pipe from a round pipe rack on the top of his desk. He opened the glass lid of the large bowl in the center of the rack and filled his pipe. You must be very disturbed, he said as he tamped the tobacco down in the large bowl. Why do you say that, Sam? Asked the doctor. Because I haven't seen you smoke your pipe in quite a while, the doctor smiled as he puffed on his own pipe. Doctor, you've heard of the mysterious abductions in Hines Park? I have. Dr. Schwartz, I think I know who our killer is. I wasn't aware that we had a killer. I thought we only had an abductor. Doctor, that's true. We haven't found any bodies. If I can prove out my theory, I think I can produce a killer. The doctor took the large pipe from his mouth and looked at the bowl. Want to tell me who you... I'm afraid that I can't. I would like to give you a hypothetical case, and would like you to tell me what your learned opinion is. Very well, Sam, go ahead. I am listening. Let us suppose, Sam started his narrative, that we have a boy who was raised by his sister. Lotion, man. That don't sound fucking conducive to that we have a boy who was raised by his sister. He depended on her so much that he couldn't make a decision without first consulting her. Suddenly his sister dies. Because he was unable to think for himself and depended entirely on her, he is lost. Let us further suppose that when his sister dies, something in his mind snaps. He cannot accept the fact that she is dead. In his warped mind, he thinks that if somehow he can keep her image alive, everything will be as before. His idea is to keep a body at his sister's dressing table. In his demented state, he actually believes that the body is that of his sister. With the body present, he can still communicate with it and believes his sister is still alive. What do you got? Sam looked at the doctor. The old man was sitting behind his desk, eyes closed, slowly puffing on his pipe. Doctor, there are a couple of questions I need answered before I can make any sense to this thing. Well, Sam, the doctor opened his eyes and gave Sam a long look. What are your questions? I have to know how a person such as I described to you would act. For instance, would he be irrational all the time? Or would there be times when he appeared normal? The next question is there anything that can bring him out of that state that he is in? The doctor looked at Sam. He emptied the ashes from his pipe in a large ashtray on his desk. He opened the glass lid of his tobacco humidor and refilled his pipe. After he got it lit, he got up from the chair he was sitting in and started walking around the paneled study. He stopped in front of a large window that overlooked the front yard. After taking the pipe from his mouth, he turned and looked at Sam. You have given me a classic example of a person, viz., a serious psychosis. Pardon me, doctor? Sam interrupted the old man. What is a psychosis? Psychosis is a serious behavioral disorder, the doctor answered. Let us start from the beginning. The shock of the sister dying triggered something in the brain. The mind did not snap, as you said. However, what actually happened was he would not let his subconscious mind accept the fact that she was dead. When this happened, there was a conflict between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, the inner mind. What are we dealing with is a split personality. When his subconscious takes over, he is compelled to find bodies to replace his sister. There is no feeling about that he has to do to accomplish this. Even the taking of a human life means nothing to him. There are times, however, when his conscious mind tells him that this is wrong. He shouldn't be doing these terrible things. His subconscious is stronger, however, and he is forced to do what it wishes. Tell me, doctor, would this person act normal at times, or would the personality change be present at all times? He most certainly would have times when the evil personality would have no effect on his thinking, and then he would act normal. Sam asked the old man. One would not know that he had any problem whatsoever. That brings me to the next question, assuming that he is in his other state. The state where the evil takes over. What would it take to bring him out of this state? The doctor, pipe in mouth, started pacing the study again. He once again stopped in front of the window. Taking his pipe from his mouth, he addressed the window. I believe in a situation such as V. affair. That a sudden shock would bring him out of his dementia. The doctor turned around, looked at Sam, and walked to his desk and sat down. I believe I know what you are trying to do, Sam. However, I think it might be dangerous. If you are going to confront him via the live body and try to convince him that his sister is alive, and then try to make him feel guilty for what he has done, your idea can, how you say, backfire. How is that? Sam asked, surprised that the doctor knew exactly what he had in mind. The shock will bring him out of his psychosis, however. Then he sees that the girl is alive. His warped mind might feel so remorseful that he could go into another psychosis, or worse, a comatose state. Doctor, I know I'm playing a dangerous game here. In fact, it's way out of my league, but I've got to prove out my theories. I've got to stop him, Doctor, for his own sake as well as the sake of some innocent girl out there. Sam got up from his chair and walked to the study door, the doctor close behind. Doctor, I would like to thank you for taking the time to hear me out. Sam turned when he reached the door and shook the old man's hand. You can send the bill to the city, Sam laughed as he patted him on the shoulder. I only want one thing out of this. What is that? Sam asked. Then you have convinced yourselves that you have the right man. I want to be the first to know. I would be happy to find out if I have the same man in mind. You got a deal, Dr. Sam said as he left the old man's office. Real authentic German there. When Sam returned to his office, 1,000 questions raced through his mind. Did Pete really fit the pattern that Dr. Schwartz had described to him? If it was Pete, why hadn't he killed Nancy? She had black hair and tried to make him make love to her. She had black hair and tried to make him make love to her. Did the times that he had acted strange really mean that he was a different personality? How about his car? Sure, it had the same letters that were seen in the park, but it was in itself not enough evidence. The answer had to be in the funeral home. How would he be able to get in there without Pete knowing it? He figured that if he was right, and Pete was his killer, the body had to be in the home at this time. As he sat in his swivel chair behind his desk, a sickening feeling started in his stomach. He was suddenly struck with the reality that Pete Worthington, a boy whom he had known all of his life, might be the sadistic killer he was trying to capture. Sam reached for the phone and dialed the number, Worthington Funeral Home. Sarah answered. Sarah, this is Sam Guthrie. Why, Chief Guthrie, you must be a mind reader. How was that, Sarah? I was just about to call you. I have to talk to you. It's really important. What I have to ask you is important too, Sarah. Tell me, is Pete home right now? Yes, he is, Chief, and that's what is so strange. I don't follow you, Sarah. What's so strange? Master Pete got a client in late last night. My Carl helped him with the body. Just a little while ago, my Carl told me they had to go to the cemetery and bury the body. You mean that they aren't even going to display the body? Sam asked, confused by what Sarah was telling him. That's right, Chief, although I shouldn't be surprised. He's done this before. Let me get this straight, Sarah. You mean that Pete's had other clients where the body was not displayed? They just embalm the body and bury it? There has been at least 4 in the past few months, but none as quick as this. He usually has the body in the viewing room for a day. Sarah, how long will they be at the cemetery? It usually takes about 2 hours. I'll give you a quick call as soon as they leave. Can you come over after I call? Sarah, as soon as I get your call, I'll be over. When Pete had brought his latest victim into the embalming room, Carl was waiting for him. He had made up his mind that this was to be the last victim. He was sick to his stomach when he finally realized what he had been a part of. The boy must be stopped, and Carl felt that only he could do it. While Pete was at the park, Carl had made preparations. He remembered that he had gone to the storeroom the last time Pete had a legitimate client. He had found only 2 bottles of maldehyde concentrate. He remembered that Pete had used 1 bottle, which was the proper amount in a normal embalming. When Pete abducted the girls, however, in order to preserve their bodies for as long a time as possible, he used 2 bottles of concentrate and an extra gallon of water. Carl knew that Pete would not even consider keeping the corpse if he felt that the body could not be preserved for at least a month. Carl's plan was to tell Pete that there was only 1 bottle of concentrate. The body could not be kept. It would have to be buried almost immediately. He realized that he was taking a chance. In Pete's demented state, he might try and threaten him. Carl figured that it was a chance that he would have to take. Concentrate to search for more. He knew that because it was a weekend, all the chemical companies would be closed. Pete would come to the conclusion that with the body not properly embalmed, it would have to be buried. After the burial, Carl would go to the chief of police and confess to the whole grisly business. After Pete had slit the tendons under the right arm and behind the leg and made the incision in the neck to prepare the unconscious girl for the arterial valve, he walked over to where Carl was standing at the embalming machine. Have you got the mixture right this time? He asked, looking at the lone bottle on the small table next to the large machine. I'm afraid that we have a problem, Pete, Carl said as he looked into the face of the demented boy. Problem? What problem? Pete screamed. Get me another bottle and be quick about it. That's the problem, Pete. There is no more concentrate. That's the last bottle. Pete's face turned into a grotesque mask of hate. He walked over to where Carl was standing next to the machine. You fool, he hissed. You stupid fool. Pete's long fingers wrapped themselves around Carl's neck. In a few minutes, the older man was gasping for breath. The face, which was inches from his own, was unrecognizable. The eyes were glazed, the lips curled up in a hideous grin. The words that he uttered were unintelligible. Carl's hands groped behind him, trying to find something which he could use as a weapon. His hands touched the bottle of concentrate. With his last ounce of strength, he managed to grasp the bottle, then crash it over the head of the demon in front of him. Pete's hands released themselves from Carl's neck. With a moan, he slumped to the floor. Carl fell back against the small table, his lungs drawing in air in large gulps. As Carl looked down at the unconscious boy, he could not believe what he was seeing. The face of the monster who had just tried to kill him was changing. The hideous grin was gone. The hard lines of the face started to soften. In a few minutes, he was looking at the serene face of a young boy he had watched grow up these past 20 years. Carl picked up a cotton pad from the table and wiped the yellow liquid from the bottle of concentrate off his face. As he was wiping Pete's face, a feeling of compassion came over him. How could he turn him in to the authorities? They would put him away in some home for the criminally insane. He loved the boy. He was the son that Sarah and he never had. It would be like turning in his own flesh and blood. As he lovingly wiped the boy's face, the stillness in the room was shattered by a deep moan. Carl dropped the cotton pad and stood up. He looked at the nude body on the embalming table. Another moan. It was the girl. She was alive. Carl walked hesitatingly over to the table. He looked down at the young girl who should have been a corpse by now. As he looked, the pale white body, the girl opened her eyes. At the pale white body, the girl opened her eyes. The eyes were blue, but were clouded over with a thin film. Help me, the voice was barely audible. Carl was trembling as he stood over the young girl, who was desperately struggling for her life. Carl could not believe what he was seeing. Pete had slit the main artery in her neck and had both ends of the artery clamped off in preparation for the arterial valve. What was happening was the girl was getting no blood to her heart. In a few minutes she would be dead, and there was nothing he could do to prevent it. The girl tried to raise herself from the table, but was already too weak. She fell back against the cold steel. Carl was grief-stricken. He was standing there watching a beautiful young girl die and could do nothing to help her. The girl let out a long sigh, then lay motionless on the table. Carl went to the cabinet where the instruments were kept and took out a stethoscope. He placed the instrument in his ears and listened for a heartbeat. Nothing. She was dead. Carl removed the instrument and started to sob. Soon his body was shaking from the uncontrolled anguish that had overtaken him. He went to a linen closet at one side of the long room and removed a white sheet. Spreading the sheet out, he covered the body. As Carl turned away from the table, he saw that Pete had regained consciousness. He walked over to where Pete was lying and helped him to his feet. What happened, he asked, still dazed by the sharp blow to his head. The girl, she's dead, Pete, and we have no way of embalming her. We are going to have to bury her. Pete looked at Carl, unable to see him clearly. All right, Carl, whatever you say. I'll get a coffin ready. I'll have to tell Sarah we have another funeral so she won't suspect. You just go up to your room and rest. I'll call you when I'm ready. Pete gave Carl no argument and sheepishly went up to his room. Carl went to the storeroom and picked out one of the inexpensive coffins. He rolled the coffin to the embalming room and placed the girl inside. He had a great deal of trouble, but managed to get the heavy coffin up the steep ramp to the ground floor. After he had slid the coffin into the hearse and closed the doors, he went to Pete's room and told him they were ready to leave. On the way to the back door, he stopped at the kitchen and told Sarah that they were leaving. As soon as the black hearse pulled out of the driveway, she went to the phone. Chief Guthrie speaking. Chief, this is Sarah. They just now left. In less than 3 minutes, Sam was knocking at the back door of the funeral home. Come in, Chief, come in. Let's go in the kitchen. Can I fix you a cup of tea while we're talking, or some coffee? Tea will be fine, Sarah. Sam sat down at the kitchen table. He watched her as she lit the fire under the teapot. In a few minutes he could hear the kettle whistle. Sarah went to a large antique bread box on the drain board and removed two of her famous cinnamon rolls. She placed them on a tray and put them in front of Sam. After filling their cups, she sat down at the table. Sarah, I haven't had one of these rolls in years. Sam took a bite, then washed it down with a large swallow of the hot tea. Chief Guthrie, I've been wanting to talk to you for weeks now, but I just never had the courage. That's strange, Sarah. I've got a problem, and I figured that you're the only one who can help me out. Go ahead, Sarah. Tell me why you called. Sarah related the same story that she had told Muriel. She then told Sam how she and Muriel went up to the room and thought they saw a corpse sitting at the dressing table. She told Sam that she felt Carl was trying to protect the boy, and after many a sleepless night, she decided that the best thing for Pete was to tell someone about what was going on in the home. What do you got, bruv? Sam listened intently as Sarah told her story. After she was finished, he sat for a long time saying nothing, just stirring his spoon in his cup. When Sam didn't answer her, Sarah said, Chief Guthrie, did I do the right thing? Yes, Sarah, you most certainly did. I think I love that boy as much as you and Carl, but we've got to stop him. Tell me, Sarah, do you still have that key to her room? Sarah walked to the cupboard, moved aside a few cups and saucers, and found the can where she had placed the key. Here it is, Chief. If you don't mind, I won't be going up with you. I couldn't take it again. I understand, Sarah, Sam said as he took the key from her. Sam quickly made his way up the stairs and was soon standing in the musty room. The drapes on the bay windows were drawn, placing the room in a half light. Sam could make out the canopied bed. His gaze rested on the dressing table with its two pots of flowers, one on each side of the large table. As Sam was standing in the dim light of the room, an eerie feeling came over him. The room suddenly turned cold. As he stood by the dressing table, he noticed a mist begin to form in the mirror. As he looked closer, a face began to take shape in the mist. It was Ginny's face. Shocked, he suddenly took a step back from the table. As he watched, horrified by the apparition, the face started to change. The eyes were now sunk deep in their sockets. The eyes were covered with a white film. Deep wrinkles started to appear in the cheeks. The mouth was now turned up into a hideous grin. As he looked at the grotesque face, slime started oozing out of her mouth. Sam stood in the freezing cold room, his body petrified with fear, watching the horrible spectacle before him. Suddenly, the mouth opened wide, and an unearthly moan came from it. The mouth started forming words, but the sound seemed to come from deep within her. He will pay. The voice sounded even deeper. He is a fucking an F word. The words were spit out of the mouth. He made me suffer. The, this is the first ghost who utters a homophobic slur. The words sounded like a rundown record player, deep and dragged out. He will pay. As Sam watched, the mist slowly started to fade away. In minutes, he could see only his reflection in the mirror. In shock, Sam backed up until he sat down on the large canopied bed. He looked down at his hands. They were trembling. I think that's trembling. He could see his breath in the deathly cold of the room. Cold beads of sweat started to form on his brow. In all of his years on the force, he had never experienced anything such as this. He had been one who laughed at stories of the supernatural. He never placed much stock in them. He always said that he wasn't afraid of anything he could see. Well, he could see this, and his entire body was in shock from the experience. As he sat there on the bed, wiping his brow, the room started to return to its normal temperature. After a few more minutes, his body stopped trembling, and he could feel the blood resume its journey through his veins. All right, Sam, he started to talk out loud to himself. She, or it, is gone. I don't believe what I saw and heard, but I have no other explanation. Let's get back to work. Check out the room. Sam walked to a clothes closet that took up one entire wall of the bedroom. As he looked through the many dressing gowns and suits, his eyes fell on one particular gown. It was a pale yellow gown with a high lace collar. He removed the gown from the closet and examined it. Unable to get a good look at the gown in the dim light, he looked for a light switch. With the light on, he was able to more closely examine the gown. He detected a sweet smelling odor which came from the material and the dress. Upon closer examination, he found what at first looked like makeup on the collar. When he put his finger on the substance, he discovered that it was not ordinary makeup. It felt more like the type used by theatrical people. If I'm not mistaken, he talked to himself again, this is the gown that he uses on all of the girls. He scraped some of the makeup off the collar and placed it in his ever present plastic bag. After putting the gown back in the closet and closing the door, he looked around the room. He recalled Sarah telling him that she heard footsteps in the middle of the night. She said they appeared to come from inside a wall. Pete had to have some way to get the bodies from the embalming room to his sister's bedroom without being seen. That means only one thing, Sam thought, a hidden staircase. He started looking around the room for a false wall or a mechanism that would trigger a door, but he could find nothing. After going around the room one more time and finding nothing, a thought suddenly struck him. This home was built in the early 1800s and was now on the list of historic homes in Plymouth. They must have a set of building plans at the historic museum in town. If he could get to see those plans, he might be able to find the hidden staircase and also, with some luck, the mechanism that triggered the door or panel. The location of the staircase had no real significance to the case. He wanted to find it so that he could carry out a plan that was forming in his mind to catch Pete. Sam walked down the long hallway to the kitchen. He was still shaken by what he had experienced in Ginny's room. He decided, however, he would tell Sarah nothing. He couldn't explain what he saw, or for that matter, why he saw it. He would have to talk to someone like Dr. Schwartz to get an explanation. For now, though, he would say nothing to nobody. Sarah, I'm leaving now. I couldn't find any more than what you told me, he lied. I want you to keep in touch with me. If Pete acts strange or goes out, call me. I want to know his every move. I think I've got enough to prove that he's our killer, but I need more evidence and I'll have to come work on it. Thank you for coming over. I feel much better now that I know it's out in the open. I'll be letting you know if anything goes on. What do you got? Oh, that's the end of chapter 10. That's good timing, buddy. As this whole table's gonna fucking collapse. Gotta quit pushing this thing. What do you got? Chapter 11. Oh no, I just hit my fucking thing. Hope the son of a bitch don't start bleeding again. That fucking sure is. God damn it. Now my face is bleeding. That's what I get for not shaving for 2 weeks. Alright, let's put this little piece back on there. Should not have touched my face. Well, I gotta go get some tissue for my face so it doesn't bleed. Oh, it's bleeding. God damn it. Got some blood, buddy. I was shaving, and I fucking cut my mole. It had been over a week since Sam's visit, and Sarah, although she kept a close watch on Pete, could find nothing unusual about his behavior. He seemed to be his old self again. He acted like he did before Ginny's death. Everything seemed to be peaceful in the old mansion until last night. In the middle of the night, she was awakened from a sound sleep. Then she heard it again. Footsteps, haunting footsteps that seemed to start nowhere and end nowhere. She got out of bed. This son of a bitch is bleeding right through my little tissue paper now. Son of a bitch. She got out of her bed, determined that this thing come open. Yeah. The whole thing fell off. This mole's gonna bleed me out. She got out of bed, determined that she would find out where the spirit footsteps were coming from. As she stepped out in the hall, the steps seemed to be almost underneath her. She walked to the landing and looked down into the darkened viewing room. The only light was the dim sidelights that lined the walls on each side of the large room. At the east end of the room, Sarah could just make out the coffin of a man that Pete and Carl had prepared for burial. From her vantage point on the landing, she could make out the face of the man lying there. She quickly turned her face away from the grotesque scene below and glanced down the hall to her room. The footsteps seemed to end somewhere in the wall near Ginny's room. Is this fucking thing not on my face? I just gotta stick the whole piece on there. The footsteps seemed to end somewhere in the wall near Ginny's room. When she reached the door, she could hear someone sobbing in the room. Her heart jumped up into her throat. The sobbing was pitiful to hear. She placed her ear to the door so that she might hear better. Ginny, my poor Ginny, I must have you back. I must. It was Pete's voice. He was talking to someone or something in her room. That's all right, Ginny, the pitiful voice went on. I'll get someone, and you'll be all better again. When Sarah heard what Pete had said, she ran back to her room and quietly closed the door. She eased herself in the bed so as not to wake Carl. In the morning, she must call Chief Guthrie. Sarah was busy in the kitchen doing the breakfast dishes. Carl had finished his breakfast and had left to go to the chemical company to purchase some supplies. Pete had come down for his usual cup of coffee. Sarah noticed that he seemed to be troubled. She looked for the telltale signs that might indicate a change in his personality, but found that, except for an uneasiness in his manner, he had not slipped back to the monster he had been in the past. Sarah, I'm going over to Walter's for breakfast. I'll bet Sam thought I died. It's been weeks since I've been over there. Why, Master Pete? That's wonderful. Chief Guthrie will be happy to see you. Sarah was just putting the dishes away when the phone in the study rang. Just a minute, Sarah grumbled as she dried her hands on a dish towel and ran down the hall to the study. Worthington Funeral Home. Sarah, I'll give you just 2 guesses who this is, a young man's voice said. My goodness, Sarah exclaimed. It can't be. Is this Anthony? Anthony Arnold? Right, the first time, Sarah. How's my favorite girl? Oh, Anthony, I'm living. That's about all I can say for myself. Same old, Sarah. Did Pete tell you that I'm going to be a house guest for a while? Why, no, Anthony. Sarah was surprised. He said nothing to me. When are you coming over? Sarah, I just got off the bus here in Plymouth. I'll get a cab and be there in a few minutes. Sarah could hardly believe what Tony had told her. Why would Pete invite his best friend to stay in the home with all the things that were going on? She was naturally happy to have Tony stay for a while. She had known Tony almost as long as she'd known Pete. The 2 boys grew up together, and Tony spent many a happy day at the mansion. After he graduated from high school, he followed in Pete's footsteps and went to mortuary school. As soon as she hung up the phone, she went into the kitchen and looked at the refrigerator. She took out a ham which she had for dinner the night before and a dish of potato salad. And potato has a fucking E at the end of it. After slicing the ham and putting it on the table with the salad, she went to the bread box and got a fresh loaf of rye bread. She remembered Tony liked her salad and was fond of ham on rye sandwiches. She had just placed some pickles on the table when the rear doorbell rang. Sarah, dear Sarah, Tony said as he placed his bag on the floor and put his arms around the old woman. Oh, Anthony, Sarah started to cry as Tony held her in his arms. Why, Sarah, is something wrong? Sarah wiped her eyes. Come into the kitchen and have a bite. I've got a lot to tell you. Tony dug into the food that Sarah had placed in front of him. He had a long bus ride from New Jersey and had not eaten in hours. Sarah sat at the table, watching the young man wolf down his food. Sarah, Tony said, his mouth full of food, you haven't lost your touch. This is delicious. After Tony had polished off 2 ham sandwiches and 2 helpings of potato salad, Sarah went to the drain board and took the lid off a cake tray. She had made a double chocolate cake. She cut a generous piece and put it on a dish and placed it in front of Tony. Sarah, I'm stuffed. I don't know if I have room for this. Anthony Arnold, this is your favorite cake. Don't tell me you can't find room for it. With Sarah's coaxing, Tony managed to finish the cake and another large glass of milk. After Sarah had cleaned up after Tony, she sat down at the table with a cup of tea. As she was stirring the hot liquid, Tony noticed that she had a worried look on her face. Sarah, what's bothering you? You look so troubled. What's happened to the cheerful Sarah I left? Tony, I don't know how to tell you how happy I am that you came to stay for a while. There's been so much going on around here, I think I'm going balmy. Well, Sarah, that's what I'm here for. You were always able to talk to me, and I could always come to you with my problem. Bzz. Tell me about it. It all started after Jenny's funeral, Sarah started her story. Pete seemed to change completely. Well, Sarah, Tony interrupted. You know it was quite a shock to him. You have to expect some change. He must be over it by now. Anyway, let me finish. We expected the poor boy to grieve after Jenny's death. We was all shocked. Something else happened to Master Pete. It's as if he has 2 personalities. One minute he is his old self, joking with me and laughing. Then he changes completely. He gets this horrible look on his face. It's like he was wearing a mask. It's horrible. And then there's these poor girls who have disappeared in Hines Park. There have been 5 of them now, the last just over a week ago. Sarah, I hadn't heard about that. You mean the girls were killed in the park? Nobody knows if they are dead or not. They just disappeared. So far, no bodies have turned up. Sarah related to Tony all of the incidents that occurred in the old mansion since the death of Ginny. After she told the startled young man that she thought Pete was involved in the abductions, Tony sat in his chair with a shocked look on his face. Sarah, it's almost unbelievable. Pete's such a fun-loving guy. Why, I used to have a ball when I was home. I just can't believe that he's mixed up in this Hines Park thing. I know, Tony, I know. I didn't want to believe it either. But after all that's happened, I know that he must be responsible. Tony walked out of the kitchen, down the long hall to the study. He sat in a large leather chair. After lighting a cigarette, he threw the match in an ashtray on a coffee table in front of him. Next to the ashtray, he saw a copy of the Plymouth Observer. He picked up the paper and glanced at the front page. There in a headline, he read about the latest abduction in Hines Park. The story described the latest victim as a young girl, 19 years of age, black hair, blue eyes, and about 115 pounds. The story went on to say that the girl had gone to the park with a group of girlfriends. After they were in the park, they found a group of boys. The girls paired off with the boys. The story said that the couples, when found by the police, were drunk and had been smoking pot. The reporter, who was rather explicit in his descriptions, wrote that the girl had sex just before she was abducted. The reporter admonished the police department for allowing this latest incident to happen. Why didn't the officer who had checked the picnic site only moments before the abduction disperse the couples? It was only a half hour before park closing, and if he had done so, would have prevented this latest incident. The reporter then got into a name-calling paragraph describing the Plymouth police as the Keystone Cops. Tony put down the paper and lit up another cigarette. As he sat there in the comfortable leather chair, he tried to recall what Sarah had told him. The abduction started right after Ginny's death. Pete's sudden transformation occurred at about the same time. If it was his best friend, what was he doing with the bodies, and for what reason did he abduct the girls? What was the connection between Ginny's death and the abductions? He then remembered that Sarah had been terrified at night by footsteps seemingly coming from inside a wall. Was there a connection between the footsteps and the bizarre happenings in the park? And what about the corpse that Sarah and Muriel had seen in Ginny's room? Was it, and repeat, was it a corpse or just a figment of two women's imaginations? The part about the funerals with no an entourage also puzzled him. Why was Pete involved with so many clients that had to have their loved ones buried without the usual wake? He had been in the mortuary business long enough when he was an apprentice to know that every once in a while an undertaker was called upon to embalm a body, then the same day take that body to the cemetery for burial. What are they? This was usually done in the case of a serious accident where the body could not be shown anyway. Going over Sarah's story in his mind, it didn't take him long to put together the incidents that she related to him. He could see that the body that she said she had seen couldn't have been Ginny's. It was probably the body of one of the missing girls, if it was a body at all. As to why he was killing the girls, this he could not comprehend. Sarah had mentioned that his old friend Chief Guthrie had gone into the room. He must have come to some conclusion, Tony thought. I think I'd better have a talk with him. Sarah, is Chief Guthrie in his office today? Tony asked as he walked into the kitchen. He and Master Pete is probably having breakfast. Why not surprise him and go to the restaurant? Sarah wiped her hands on an apron and walked over to where Tony was standing. Would you do me a favor? She looked down at her hands as she spoke. Why, sure, Sarah, what is it? Last night I heard those footsteps again. I went out in the hall and heard them go into Miss Ginny's room. I walked up to the room and heard Master Pete sobbing his poor eyes out. He was talking to someone in that room, but I know there was no one in there. I think that it's going to happen again. Could you tell, Chief Guthrie? Why, Sarah, Tony was shocked to hear the story Sarah had told him. I'll be sure and tell him. Tony walked into the rear entrance of Walter's. He stood near the counter and watched the action in the crowded room. He saw Nancy walk by him with a tray full of food for a young couple, seated at an end booth. After she had served the couple, she turned and walked toward him. He was instantly struck by her beauty. He glanced at her full figure in the tight-fitting uniform. Just one in your party? She asked as she smiled at Tony. I'm joining Pete and Chief Guthrie. I'm a little late. I hope they haven't left yet. No, they're still here. I'll take you to their table. Tony followed Nancy through the crowded restaurant. He couldn't help but notice her body as she walked in front of him. Her hips swayed seductively from side to side as she walked. He could see the outline of her buttocks through the thin material of the uniform. What a body, he thought, as they approached Pete's table. I brought you a guest, Nancy said as Sam and Pete looked up from their breakfast. Tony, Sam exclaimed as he saw him standing at the table. How in the hell are you? Tony took Sam's outstretched hand and grasped it firmly. Sam, it's good to see you. How are you doing? Pete looked up at Tony, a shocked expression on his face. How are you, Pete managed to say as he offered his hand. Pete, you old buddy, you look great in that outfit. I guess that I'm going to have to get me a suit like that pretty soon. We undertakers have to keep up the image, right, Pete? Hey, Nancy asked as she watched the exchange of greetings. Is anyone going to bother to introduce me? I'm sorry, Nancy, Sam said. Let me do the honors, Tony. This is the best waitress in the house. I want you to meet Nancy Brooks. Nancy, this is Pete's old school buddy, Tony Arnold. Nancy offered her hand. He took it and held it for a few seconds. Are all of your buddies this good looking? Nancy smiled as she removed her hand from his. A scowl came over Pete's face as he watched Nancy give Tony the once over with her eyes. Sit down, Tony. What are you going to have? I just polished off a big breakfast at Pete's. Just give me a Danish and a coffee if you don't mind. I don't mind at all. Nancy smiled at Tony after she had written down the order. Well, Pete asked his old buddy, what brings you back to the old hometown? Tony looked at Pete, not believing what he heard. Why, Pete? I just talked to you last week. I told you that I just graduated. You told me to come and spend a few weeks with you until I could land a job. Don't you remember? Pete looked at Tony, his face a total blank. He tried to remember back to last week. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he seemed to recall that he had talked to Tony. It was just after he had gotten that last girl. He had no recollection of the conversation. How could he ever think of asking Tony to spend a few weeks at the mansion? Ever since Carl and him had to dispose of the last body, he was beside himself with grief. He would go to her room and find no one there. He couldn't bear it. He had to have Ginny back. That meant only one thing. He would have to kill again to give life to his beloved Ginny. Pete, what's wrong? Tony was talking to him. It's nothing, Tony. I remember now. I'm glad to see you. Have you been at the house yet? Yeah, Pete. I called from the bus station and talked to Sarah. She asked me to come right over. I dropped off my luggage. I hope that nothing's wrong. Wrong, Pete tried to hide his fear. What could be wrong? I'm glad to see you. Pete, there's a phone call for you. It's Carl. Nancy set a cup of coffee down in front of Tony and gave him a wink. Excuse me, Pete said as he got up from the table. I'll be right back. Doesn't he seem to be acting strange to you? Tony asked, taking a sip of his coffee. Tony, I'm glad that you showed up when you did. I've got a real problem on my hands, and I don't know how to go about solving it. If you're talking about Pete and these abductions in the park, Sarah told me about it. All about it, Sam. All about it. Sam, I just can't bring myself to believe that he is responsible. Tony, I'm afraid it's true. Everything points to him. The only thing left for me to do now is to tie up the loose ends. Now that you're here, I can use you in my plans to stop Pete. Nancy brought Tony his Danish. As she placed the plate in front of him, she purposely let her leg brush against his. Tony looked up at her and smiled. Will there be anything else, Tony? She asked, giving him a big smile. Well, I guess that'll be all for now. But if I want something later, I'll be sure and let you know. Pete came back from answering his phone call. I'll have to go now. Carl's going to pick me up here. We have to go to St. Mary's to pick up a body. See you back at the house, Tony. After Pete left, Tony took a bite of his Danish. For a few moments, Sam said nothing. Then, after Tony had finished the Danish and was washing it down with his coffee, Sam finally broke the silence. Tony, would you be willing to go along with the scheme I have to trap Pete? Why, sure, Sam. I'll do anything I can to help. It's just that I still can't believe that it's really him. Before Ginny's death, he was a completely different person. It's hard for me to believe that he could have changed so much in only a few months. That's the whole key to this thing. When Ginny died, something snapped. He is not the Pete that you and I have known all of our lives. I want to stop these killings and also try and find some help for Pete. What do you have in mind? I won't give you the details now. I'm not exactly sure just how I'm going to go about it. I just know that I need you and Nancy. Tony looked at Sam in a surprised expression on his face. Nancy, how are you going to use her? Like I said, I haven't worked it all out yet, but I need her. If she'll agree to do it. By the way, I noticed the fireworks between you two. I have to get to tell you that Nancy and Pete have been dating. He thinks that she is his girl. Well, Tony was surprised to hear that Pete was dating. How does she feel about it? She's not sure about Pete. You and I know that he never dated a girl in his life. She had the hots for him, but Pete got scared by her advances. Pete's crazy. She's a beautiful girl. I'd give my eye teeth to have her. Doesn't surprise me though. You can blame the way he is on Ginny. She always overprotected him. You're right, Tony. If you wanted to put the blame on this whole mess on someone, you could say that it was all her fault. Yet, I really can't blame Ginny. She felt that she had a responsibility to her folks in raising him. She did the best that she could. Sam, I just remembered something. Sarah told me just a little while ago that she heard those footsteps again. She wanted me to be sure and tell you. What all did she say? Sam asked, surprised by what Tony was telling him. She told me that she woke up last night and heard a noise outside her door. She got up and went out in the hall and heard these footsteps. They seemed to be going to Ginny's room. When she got to Ginny's door and listened, she could hear Pete in there crying. What does it all mean, Sam? Sam had a grim look on his face as he answered Tony. It means that it's going to happen again. He can't stand the fact that there's no body in the room. He's going to have to get another girl. Tony was shocked by what Sam was saying. You mean that's the reason he's killing these girls? He thinks that he can keep Ginny's image alive by having a body in her room? That's what it's all boils down to, Tony. It's gruesome. My guess is that he abducts the girls from the park, takes them to the funeral home, kills them, and embalms them, and takes them up to Ginny's room and puts them in the chair in front of her dressing table. There is still one thing that I haven't figured out yet. What's that, Sam? How does he get the bodies from the embalming room to her bedroom? I figure since he can't take a chance of anyone seeing him, there has to be a secret staircase going from the embalming room to her bedroom. That would account for the footsteps, Tony said as he tried to follow Sam's reasoning. The only thing that I have to find out now is where is that staircase? What do you plan on doing? Tony asked. Going to the Plymouth Historical Museum and asked Barbara if I could see the building plans for the Worthington Mansion. I hope to find the answer there. In the meantime, do me a favor and keep your eye on Pete. We have to know his every move. He's going to have to get another girl, and from what Sarah says, soon. Call me as soon as you notice anything strange. All right, buddy. I'll let you know. What's that? 102 pages in. Great. All right, that's going to be it. It's a classic.